Hi YouTube. I've been away for a minute and I'm kind of ashamed about it. Now, here's how I'm gonna put this. What's the worst thing you've done to yourself for a while? For me, I was on top of things up until the end of March. And what ended up happening is I had to move for a while, just to deal with some things, life. And then my motherboard died. Now, I could have avoided this. This could have been avoided completely because, as far as I know, the storage controller was going dead slowly but surely. Eventually, I would get random restarts where the motherboard would not be able to detect any of the storage devices connected to it. And that was a pretty clear sign that I had to do something about it. Now, the thing is that I had so much things going on at the same time that I was like, it's gonna be fine. I'll just deal with it when I can, until eventually it died completely. Now the motherboard itself works, but the storage controller on it just went completely like not being able to recognize any other devices, regardless of what you connect to what port, SATA, M.2, whatever. So my only other option was either to use like an LSI card for storage, which is out of the question. So one of these basically, one of these bad babies. So yeah, I use those for my NAS, and nowadays you can get them pretty dirt cheap. And I was lucky enough to be in a place where I have all of my parts, for all of my hardware, because I have my server here. That was the LSI card, by the way. I just threw it like a fucking frisbee. That wasn't really an option. So as you do, I had to get a new motherboard and just swap out the hardware. And, I thought everything was going to be great and fine and dandy, right? Well, not so much. Not so much, because it turns out run it till it's dead is a bad strategy, because, the motherboard decided, you know what, I'm just gonna pull something in hell down in hell with me. And basically what happened is this little guy basically the storage controller on it right here died. Now, how did I diagnose this? Well, I put it in a few different machines. I've got a big server down here. I've got a old system, an old AMD system here. One of my first PCs that I built myself. I just decided to test it in all possible slots on all possible devices, and the storage controller on it just goes warm, but the device itself is not detected in whatever device I put it. I also tried it in an external enclosure for M.2 on a carrier M.2 card. Nothing works. The reality with these storage controllers is that there's layers of encryption. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and if you cannot read the storage controller itself, it would be very difficult for you to restore data from the chips right here. And for this 1 terabyte drive, very conveniently, for it to die right at the deadline where I had to deliver something, which was very important. So, talk about self-sabotage. I have plenty of options to back up everything that I do on a daily basis. And I actually do, I have offsite storage. I've got VPS, multiple VPS instances running for production services and all kinds of different stuff, But at the end of the day, the most important work, because the most important work that I just had to deliver was sitting on my desktop. Why? Literally the one single place that I don't back up. I lost almost 3 weeks worth of work, which was on this and on my desktop. Like, it wasn't any development project. It wasn't any repository stuff. It was, just stuff that takes a lot of time and consideration, but it's not developer stuff necessarily. So major crisis. And this was at the point where I was also very happy to basically be like, oh, well, I just started, getting into making YouTube videos and all kinds of stuff like that. And I was thinking everything's fine and it's going to be fine. And then this thing dies. And now all of a sudden I have to restore the entirety of my work within like a few days. So as you do, you'd completely discard sleeping for a little while and you start rebuilding everything from scratch. Now, The good part about that is that at least I've done it once, right? At least I've managed to do it once, and I already know what the steps are and what the outcome is. And this is a very good argument, by the way, against using AI for everything that you do, because if I had completely offloaded this entire thing to I wouldn't have been able to restore my work as effectively as I did. I actually did, and I'm very happy, and it took me a while to recover. And that entire fiasco essentially cost me about 2 to 3 weeks, to completely regain traction. So yeah, that was fun. But I'm not complaining. I'm just note taken. Thanks. This is a lesson to be learned. And because of it, I said, you know what, I'm gonna spec out a backup script essentially that would take care of my backups for ongoing work when I do stuff like this, because not everything all the time needs to be in version control, even though it's a valuable strategy. So I came up with this script, and I created a repository called side quests. Side quests is this little thing. Now in here, I'm gonna put in some of the things that come up as side projects that are worth keeping. And if anybody ever needs to use something like this, just go ahead and, knock yourself out, I guess. Now, if I was using Linux, I would do this with rsync, but since I'm using Windows for the bulk of my day-to-day work, just because of the convenience of it, and we're gonna talk about this more in a future video, this repository is based on robocopy, which is a built-in with Windows. And the first thing that we're gonna take a look at is essentially this script. And as you can see, it's built out in PowerShell, specifically in PowerShell 5.1. Now, why did I choose this version? Well, it comes shipped with Windows post-install, and you just need to enable scripting for any PowerShell script to work. Now, if you ask me a lot of things about Bash, I'll be able to tell you a ton of things about Bash, but I'm not the best at PowerShell. I do know some things, and I'm kind of okay with working with it, but I'm not the biggest, on Bash itself. On PowerShell, itself. I spec'd this thing out, and I had like the general idea of what needs to happen, but it's a thing that I mostly offloaded to AI. And I built this out with Qwen 3.627b, which is the dense model. And as you do, I did some, just manual review of the entire functionality, just fix up a few things here and there just to have it more consistent and better looking, better implemented and all that, because at the end of the day, AI models are still, they're very useful, but it's still in some certain places we're doing some crazy stuff. I've made a few notes here for myself because I cannot remember all of this stuff. We're gonna take a look at the script itself and what it basically does, so it's not just any miraculous unknown script on your system. So the first thing is the general script functionality. You have a config file which basically sets up the environment of what you're going to be backing up, where the backups are going to be going, and the script itself implements retries, and it will show you card notifications in Windows itself natively through PowerShell. It also has retention period settings, and here I use my own setup as a default example. You defined your backup pairs, which is an array of objects essentially, and this is what you need to define. First up, you need a source. This is the source of what you're going to be backing up. For me, this is my repositories locally on the system. And I do this because sometimes I have in-flight work, and I will have work that's not committed to any branch. So it's a good idea for me essentially to back up my own repositories folder that I'm working in. And I do that in two places, in two drives. And one of these is an external drive. And when a drive is marked, when you have like an external drive or a flash drive or something like this, you can set it up with optional true, which means that if the drive is not available, the script won't error out. meaning that it will see, oh, this drive is optional. So if it's not available, I should just continue working, right? And inside of the backup directories, we are excluding Git, we're excluding node modules, virtual environments, and any log directories, any specific files that we might want to exclude, such as .log files, .tmp, and thumbsdb is also a useful suggestion here. By the way, I should add this to my own config. And then we can see like a simplified config for this and what the entire thing looks without all of these comments. And for example, this is the recordings directory for my YouTube work. It uses like an external drive just for the sake of it. Okay. Now, robocopy also supports copying to network shares, which you can specify by using, for example, paths. You can specify a network share if it was, for example, name of the server. My server is called null srv, and then we can have backups, whatever. Now, note that for network shares, for example, on a NAS or a remote system, something like this, for network shares, the script does have automatic retries. Unless you use the optional thing, it will error out if the network share is not available. Also, if your network share is protected by is password protected and you need to input some credentials to be able to access it, you can go into Windows Credential Manager, enter those one time, just save those in Windows Credential Manager, try to access your drive afterwards with those credentials, and then the script will automatically authenticate through Windows Credential Manager to access your share, essentially. The script itself is quite large, but we can take a look of a few of the functionalities that we have in here. The first thing that ever happens before the script runs is it validates your backup config. Basically, it validates if this file is looking good. If it finds problems, it logs all the problems, and you can define your log directories like this. For example, this is your retention period, and this is a flag which I decided, we could make it scheduled a few times a day, but it will run just once and set a flag that it ran today. So the next time that it runs this same day, it's going to see that flag and it's going to say, okay, I need to skip this backup because we already did the backups. By having this as false, the script will essentially back up everything in the config every time. It's good to mention that it doesn't have, kind of like versioning, I guess, or iterative backups with timestamps, creating a subdirectory, for example, for each backup with timestamps and all that. I decided against it because it's kind of, it's kind of overkill. The deleted directory holds files that are deleted for a number of days, which here we have the default of 3. We retain logs for 14 days. You can adjust this as you want. And this is the default opener application for logs in this app. We have also, after config validation, we do have a test function to test these configs if everything is valid. We have like stuff like test target reachable. This sets up the decision if a drive is available or not. Take a look at the comments if you're interested. We have test ran today, which is basically the thing that determines if the script has already ran based on this toggle. So basically on line 604 with test ran today, we detect if the script has already ran and this flag exists, which will determine if we will keep running the backups or not. We can also use the force option to override, and this is pretty much it. So after the script is finished with all the tests and stuff, it's gonna basically create a real run depending on the outcome of those tests. When a real run starts, there are a few things that happen. First, it creates a timestamped log file based on your log directory. It sends a backup starting toast notification through Windows, which happens. There's a function for this right here. This is how we form the Windows native toast notifications. And we add a button to open the log so we can monitor it in real time. The log will be opened by the log opener program, and so will the final report markdown table, and I'm going to show you what this looks like in a moment. The script itself will not abort completely if a target is failed or missing or unavailable. It will just mark it as failed and log that appropriately and continue to other backup targets and their respective destinations. So this is the array for robocopy arguments that we're using. And out of these, it's most important that we focus on the /mir that we have right here. Here's how MIR works. It mirrors exactly the source that it's backing up currently into the target. And if the target already has a bunch of files in it, if a file that you have in the target has been deleted in the source, it will also be deleted in the target after the current backup. And because of this functionality, we also have a pre-backup detection for any of the files that have been deleted in the backup directory. And we put those in the deleted directory kind of like this. So I'm going to go into F and I have a backup directory right here. And I have desktop deleted. These are unraid configurations. These are the repos. And if we go in here, we don't have anything. We don't have anything, but we do have something. And we will keep those, the retention mechanism will keep those for up to 3 days back. So if you lose something, you have up to 3 days by default to go into your deleted folder for your backup destination and just check what is in that deleted folder right here for the desktop. But yeah, this is essentially how the script works. Once the backups are finished, it will try to generate a summary of what happened, and it will detect if there were any failed files or destinations, and it will count those into the final summary, and it will set a status to let you know what failed. So then you can open the log and inspect any problems that you had. Now, very often with Windows, because of binary files and files that are being used, you are going to get some warnings. Here are the rules under which we are going to determine what is a failure and what is a warning. There's quite a range of return codes. I've decided that we are going to separate all of these statuses into 3 groups. So 0 to 7 is success, 8 to 15 is warning, and 16 plus is failure, fatal, source unreachable, out of disk space, and so on. So I encourage you, if you don't understand what these return codes from robocopy are, you can look them up. I think this is a reasonable setup. And if you think you would like this to function another way, you can do this by modifying these lines right here. So this is line 480 to 490 to modify the return code rules. Okay, so I think that instead of going over function by function by function in this script one by one, which is going to be a lot of work, I say that instead we open up task scheduler. So we're in task scheduler, and this is a task that I've set up for myself. How was this task created? Well, with the PowerShell script, I also ship a script to set up your task, which you can use for yourself. It has a daily schedule of a few times a day. So 2 a.m., 2 p.m., and 9 p.m. is what I decided it would be reasonable to default to. You can overwrite this by setting times for yourself manually via the CLI when you install the task. Otherwise, you can just run the script and it will just set up the task for you. Now, one very important thing, by the way, I completely forgot to mention this. The primary backup script uses a run hidden VBS. This is Visual Basic. And the entire point of this is essentially when the backup script runs through task scheduler, it will not show you a window flashing. Maybe you might be doing something. You might be pressing Control C at that very moment. But we don't want the script to flash in front of you, which might both interrupt your work, your script, and so on and so forth. So we want it to run in the background. So the notifications for the script itself are set through the PowerShell app ID. All right, so after my camera died, we're back, baby. So anyways, very professional. But without further ado, let's run this, and it's going to show up toast thingy, and it's going to open the log based on the log opener program that we use from in here, which for me is Notepad, because Notepad has very good markdown support. I don't believe it's the fully extended markdown for advanced code stuff, but for general documents, it's I think markdown is very well supported. This is, by the way, okay, so this is our last backup. So when a backup starts, it's going to create this log file for you, which is timestamped of when it started. And you're going to see what is being backed up, what is being excluded, what is being logged. Here we have one failed file. And just because of the return code, of that failed file, we are going to have an exit code of 9, which is going to be marked as a warning. In general, for most cases, this is not really that big of a problem. I've come to understand from using robocopy that this is actually quite common. And finally, it's going to append to this huge table, which is the report for all of your runs. It's going to tell you this script ran. This is, of course, the date. This is when it completed. This is the return code, the final RC of the script itself. This is the backup log, meaning this file right here. And then this is the result for each of the destinations that you're backing up to. There were 2 warnings for 2 backup destinations because of the 2 failed files with return code 9. And this is why it displays this warning glyph or emoji. The runs.md is going to get auto trimmed based on the log rotation basis. If you do 3 backups a day for 7 days and your log rotation period is 7 days, it's going to keep 21 entries until it starts cleaning up old runs. It was a bit of an interesting problem to deal with UTF-8 BOM support with PowerShell and, just being able to properly write an emoji to a text file. But it is what it is. Like, older PowerShell is like that. So yeah, listen, back up your stuff. Do not be as retarded as I am. And I do want to share like a story that happened a very long time ago, which actually taught me to recover from crisis situations like this when you don't have a backup or you don't have anything to show up with. And it actually developed quite the skill. This is a skill of itself, being able to stay up for 3 days in ultra focus mode to recover your to recover your work from scratch. I used to have a manager, not really a manager, more like a team leader at one of my workplaces. And there was this situation where the dude was basically just playing League of Legends all day, like in the office, like literally to the left of me, right next to me on his work laptop. And he would go out of the office early and would go home and say, oh, I gotta sit down and concentrate and work and whatever. And the dude was like in League of Legends and he was just grinding looks mid, also inting heavily. There was a time where management passed down a request from the clients. Clients basically were like, hey, you've been working on this for so long. Let's see, a demo or something that you've done. Then the guy that was supposed to be doing all that work, but instead was playing League of Legends, was like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that because my hard drive died on my work laptop. My SSD died. And I knew that was bullshit. I knew that it was bullshit, but I couldn't do anything about it. And everybody knew that was bullshit. And he was a complete bullshitter. But he said, I'm just getting promoted. So he told me, now you have to account for this shit. And I was like, oh yeah, I would like to run you over with my car for sure. But I stood up to the maybe I shouldn't have, but I decided that, I will take up the challenge and account for your complete lack of presence, competence, and everything. And God is my witness, plus about 15 other people, that I completed it mostly, not completely, but mostly. And there was a demo for the client, but the dude got promoted anyway. That's how life is, I guess. Honestly, dude, thank you for being such a retard, basically. Thanks to this guy, I developed the skill of being able to pull something out of my ass rather quickly and, just get my shit together and just deliver. I don't know. I think that this is a skill. I don't think that people need to have these skills. We can be smarter than this. So back up your stuff, like use Veeam or use literally whatever. Use MyScript. It's available. It's open source. It's for free on GitHub. Just, don't allow this to happen, because depending on the situation, and I've seen some pretty intense situations, like this thing can basically like an event like an SSD dying like this, it can ruin your life depending on what it is that you do. So just take care of your stuff. Subscribe, like the video, and live long and prosper. Peace.